I was sworn to uphold the law, but that day, the law was wrong. I spent my life judging others until one case judged me. To save an innocent man, I had to do the unthinkable. I broke my own law.
I was sworn to uphold the law, but that day the law was wrong. My name is Judge William Harrison, and for 23 years I sat behind that mahogany bench in the Montgomery County Courthouse in Silver Spring, Maryland. I wore the black robe with pride. I believed in order, in precedent, in the sacred text of our legal system. My colleagues called me Iron Will, not because I was cruel, but because I was consistent, fair, unmovable, until Marcus Chen walked into my courtroom. It was a Tuesday in late September, when everything I believed shattered like glass. The courtroom was packed that morning, unusual for a preliminary hearing. I could feel the tension before I even took my seat. The prosecution had a slam-dunk case, they said, open and shut. A young man, barely 24, accused of armed robbery at a convenience store on Georgia Avenue. The evidence seemed overwhelming: security footage, a witness identification, and Marcus's own presence near the scene. But something felt wrong from the moment I looked into his eyes. I've seen thousands of defendants. You develop an instinct after 2 decades. You can almost smell guilt, see it in the way someone holds their shoulders, avoids your gaze. Marcus Chen didn't have that look. His eyes held something else entirely, pure crystallized terror. Not the fear of being caught, but the fear of being powerless against a machine designed to crush him. "Your Honor," his public defender began, her voice already resigned to defeat. "My client maintains his innocence, but given the evidence—" I raised my hand. "I'll hear from the defendant himself." The courtroom went silent. It wasn't standard procedure, not at this stage. I saw the prosecutor, Daniel Matthews, an ambitious man hungry for a perfect conviction record, shift uncomfortably in his seat. Marcus stood. His hands trembled as he gripped the defendant's table. "Judge Harrison," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I didn't do this. I was at the library. I was studying for my nursing exam. I have dreams, sir. I have a mother who cleaned office buildings for 20 years to give me a chance she never had. I would never—" His voice broke. Something in that moment reached through my armor of judicial impartiality. Maybe it was the way he mentioned his mother. Maybe it was the desperation that felt too genuine to be performance. Or maybe after 23 years of watching the legal system work exactly as designed, grinding through lives with mechanical precision, I finally saw its capacity for catastrophic error. "This court will adjourn until tomorrow," I announced, my gavel striking wood with an authority I suddenly questioned. "I want to review the evidence personally." The prosecutor shot to his feet. "Your Honor, that's highly irregular." "So noted, Mr. Matthews. We're adjourned." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study, surrounded by law books that suddenly felt like monuments to my own hubris. My wife, Catherine, found me there at 2 in the morning, still wearing my reading glasses, staring at the police report. "Will," she said softly, touching my shoulder, "in 23 years I've never seen you bring a case home like this." I looked up at her. "Cat, what if we're wrong? What if I'm about to send an innocent man to prison?" She was quiet for a moment. Then you do what you've always done. You find the truth." But finding the truth would require something I'd never done before, something that violated every principle I'd built my career upon. I would have to step down from my bench and become what I'd spent my life judging, someone who breaks the law, because sometimes the law itself is the criminal, and I was about to commit judicial suicide to prove it. What I didn't know then was that my decision would cost me everything, my reputation, my career, and nearly my life, but it would also save a man's future and expose a corruption so deep it would shake our entire justice system. This is the story of how I broke my own law for justice. The security footage haunted me. I must have watched it 50 times that first night, sitting alone in my chambers with the door locked. The convenience store video showed a man in a dark hoodie entering at 10:47 p.m., pulling what appeared to be a weapon, and demanding cash from the terrified clerk, a young woman named Sarah Winters. The robbery lasted 93 seconds. Then the suspect fled. The police had arrested Marcus Chen 37 hours later. But here's what kept me awake: the timestamp. The footage showed 10:47 p.m. on August 15th. According to the police report, Marcus was identified through a combination of witness description and neighborhood canvassing. That phrase bothered me. It was vague, bureaucratic, the kind of language that hides rather than reveals. I picked up the phone at 6 a.m. and called someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. "This better be important, Will," came the gravelly voice of Detective Raymond Porter, now retired. Ray had been the best investigator in Montgomery County before a department scandal he refused to be part of had pushed him out. We'd worked together on dozens of cases. He was honest, a rare quality that had made him enemies. "Ray, I need your help. Off the books." There was a long pause. "You're a judge, Will. You don't do off the books." "I do now." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Address." We met at a diner in Rockville, far enough from Silver Spring that we wouldn't be recognized together. The morning sun cut through the window as Ray slid into the booth, older and grayer than I remembered, but with those same sharp eyes that missed nothing. I showed him everything: the footage, the police report, Marcus's statement claiming he was at the Wheaton Library that night. Ray studied the documents for 20 minutes without speaking, his coffee growing cold. Finally, he looked up. "Will, do you know what you're risking here?" "I know." "No," he said firmly. "I don't think you do. You're a sitting judge investigating a case you're presiding over. This is grounds for disbarment. Career suicide." "Tell me about the evidence, Ray." He sighed, running his hand over his face. "The identification is weak. Witness description usually means they showed the victim a photo array and she picked someone, but memory is unreliable, especially under trauma. The neighborhood canvassing phrase. That's code for we didn't have a suspect, so we looked for young Black and Asian men in the area who fit a generic description." My stomach turned. Racial profiling. They won't call it that. They'll say it was reasonable police work based on witness description. But yeah, that's what it smells like. I pulled out another document. Marcus's statement. He says he was at the Wheaton Library until closing. That's 11 p.m. If he's telling the truth, then he couldn't have committed a robbery at 10:47 p.m. and made it to Wheaton by closing. The library is, what, 25 minutes away? Even speeding, he'd have been late. Ray's eyes narrowed. Did anyone check the library? I felt anger rising in my chest, anger at myself, at the system, at every assumption I'd made. Not according to the police report. Of course not. They had their man. Why complicate things? We have a strong Portuguese-speaking community here who understand how quickly the system can fail you if you don't have resources to fight back. Have you seen this kind of injustice in your own city? Drop your city name in the comments below. Let's see how widespread this problem really is. Ray leaned forward. Will, if you're going where I think you're going, you need to understand something. The system protects itself. If you prove the cops got this wrong, there will be consequences. They'll come after you. I met his gaze. Then let them come. Can you check the library? See if they have any record of Marcus being there? Ray stood slowly. I'll make some calls. But Will, once we start pulling this thread, the whole case unravels and you'll unravel with it. He was right, of course. I just didn't know how right. Ray called me 3 days later with news that changed everything. The library has him on camera, he said without preamble. Marcus Chen checked out 2 nursing textbooks at 8:45 p.m. on August 15th. He studied at table 7 in the second-floor reading room. And here's the kicker. He left at 11:03 p.m. The exit timestamp is crystal clear. I gripped my phone tighter. So he couldn't have committed the robbery. Physically impossible unless he learned to teleport. Will, the kid's innocent. And someone, let him get arrested anyway, I finished. That night I did something I'd never done in 23 years on the bench. I went to the county jail to visit a defendant in a case I was judging. I wore civilian clothes and signed in as William Harrison, attorney. Not technically a lie, since I was indeed a licensed attorney, but misleading enough to make my chest tight with anxiety. Marcus was brought to the visiting room in an orange jumpsuit that swallowed his thin frame. He looked smaller than he had in court, diminished by the grinding machinery of incarceration. When he saw me, confusion crossed his face. Judge Harrison, I don't understand. Listen carefully, Marcus, because I'm going to violate about 15 ethical rules by being here. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. The library has security footage of you there the night of the robbery. You're telling the truth. His eyes filled with tears. I told them. I told the police. I told my lawyer. Nobody would listen. They said the store clerk identified me, so it didn't matter. It matters, I said firmly. It matters more than anything. But Marcus, I need you to understand what happens next. When I present this evidence, there's going to be pushback. The prosecution will fight it. They may claim the footage was tampered with, or that you had an accomplice who committed the robbery while you established an alibi. They'll try everything to avoid admitting they arrested the wrong person. Why? His voice cracked. Why would they do that? I wanted to give him a comforting answer, something about mistakes and good intentions, but he deserved the truth. Because admitting error means opening themselves to liability. It means questioning their procedures. It means their conviction rate takes a hit, and for some people in this system, Marcus, their statistics matter more than your life. He was silent for a long moment. Then, my mum still doesn't know I'm here. I told her I was staying with a friend. She works nights cleaning offices in Bethesda. She's 63 and her knees are shot, but she keeps working because I'm supposed to be her retirement plan. I'm supposed to become a nurse and take care of her. His voice dropped to a whisper. How do I tell her I'm in jail for something I didn't do? Something broke inside my chest. I thought about my own mother, who'd worked 2 jobs to put me through law school. I thought about all the defendants I'd sentenced with clinical detachment, never wondering about their mothers waiting at home. You won't have to tell her, I said, because I'm going to fix this. How? That was the question I'd been avoiding. How does a judge prove innocence when the entire system is designed to presume guilt once charges are filed? By doing something I've never done before, I told him, by stepping off the bench and into the arena. After I left the jail, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at my hands, the same hands that had signed hundreds of sentencing orders, had sent people to prison with the stroke of a pen. How many of them had been innocent? How many had tried to tell me the truth while I hid behind procedure and precedent? My phone buzzed. A text from Ray. We have a problem. Someone knows you visited the jail. My blood ran cold. The system was about to fight back. And I was about to discover that the corruption in this case went far deeper than a wrongful arrest. It went all the way to the top of Montgomery County's justice system, including people I'd trusted for decades. The summons came the next morning. Chief Judge Margaret Thornton wanted to see me in her chambers immediately. No explanation, just the terse message delivered by her clerk with barely concealed satisfaction. Margaret and I had joined the bench the same year, but we'd never been friends. She was political where I was principled, connected where I was independent. I knew what this was about before I walked through her door. Her office was pristine, floor-to-ceiling law books that looked more decorative than used, expensive artwork, photographs of her with senators and governors. Margaret sat behind her massive desk like a queen granting audience. William, sit, not a request. I remained standing. Margaret, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm going to be direct. It's come to my attention that you've been conducting your own investigation into the Chen case, that you visited the defendant at county jail, that you've been meeting with retired Detective Porter. She paused. Would you like to explain yourself? I'm pursuing justice. You're pursuing a mistrial. She stood, her voice hardening. You've compromised your impartiality. You've violated judicial ethics. Frankly, Will, I'm not sure if you're having some kind of crisis or if you've simply lost your mind. The defendant is innocent, I have proof. Then present it through proper channels. File the evidence. Let the system work. The system is what failed him in the first place. I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. The police never checked his alibi. The prosecutor never looked beyond the surface. And now you want me to pretend I didn't see the truth because it might be inconvenient. Margaret's expression went cold. I want you to remember who you are. You're not a defense attorney. You're not an investigator. You're a judge. And judges maintain objectivity. They don't go on crusades. Even if someone innocent goes to prison, especially then. She moved around her desk, lowering her voice to something almost gentle. Will, I've known you for over 2 decades. You're one of the finest judges I've ever worked with. Don't throw that away. Recuse yourself from the case. Let another judge handle it. Present your evidence to them if you must, but step back before you destroy your career. It was a lifeline, an exit ramp. I could take it, preserve my reputation, and tell myself I'd done the right thing. But then I remembered Marcus's face, his mother who didn't know her son was in jail, all the other defendants I'd never looked at closely enough. No, I said quietly. I'm seeing this through. Margaret's mask of concern dropped. Then you leave me no choice. I'm formally requesting that the Judicial Ethics Committee investigate your conduct. And will? She returned to her desk, her tone now purely administrative. Prosecutor Matthews has filed a motion to have you removed from the Chen case due to bias. The hearing is tomorrow. I suggest you prepare a very good defense. I left her office understanding that this wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about power, about control, about protecting the system at all costs. Ray was waiting in my car when I got to the parking garage. "We need to move fast," he said. "I've been asking questions and people are getting nervous. The arresting officer on Marcus's case, his name is Officer Derek Collins. He's made a career out of these quick arrests in minority neighborhoods. Impressive conviction rate. Several commendations. Also 3 excessive force complaints that mysteriously disappeared from his record. Who made them disappear? That's what worries me. Someone with access to internal affairs records. Someone higher up the chain." He handed me a folder. But I found something else. The convenience store clerk, Sarah Winters. She didn't just identify Marcus from a photo array. Collins showed her one photo, just one, Marcus's photo, and he told her, "We got the guy who robbed you. Can you confirm this is him?" My hands shook as I opened the folder. "That's not a lineup, that's suggestion, that's misconduct," Ray finished. "The kind that gets cases thrown out. But Will, here's the thing. Sarah Winters disappeared." "What?" "Moved out of her apartment 3 days ago. No forwarding address, no phone number. It's like she vanished. Someone was cleaning up loose ends, and I was running out of time to stop them." The courtroom was packed for my own hearing. Ironic, considering I'd spent years sitting where Judge Arthur Henderson now sat. Arthur was 70, traditional, and strictly by the book. We disagreed on legal philosophy for years, but I respected him. He wouldn't be swayed by politics, he'd follow the law, which terrified me because the law wasn't on my side. Prosecutor Daniel Matthews stood first, his expensive suit and practiced confidence filling the room. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter. Judge Harrison has demonstrated clear bias in the Chen case. He's conducted his own investigation, contacted the defendant inappropriately, and is actively working to undermine the prosecution's case. This isn't judicious behavior, it's advocacy. We request his immediate removal." My attorney, Patricia Chen, no relation to Marcus, though the coincidence wasn't lost on me, rose to respond. Patricia was fierce, brilliant, and one of the few lawyers brave enough to take my case when word got out what I was doing. "Your Honor," she began, "Judge Harrison didn't show bias. He showed diligence. When evidence came to his attention that suggested actual innocence, he did what any conscientious jurist should do. He investigated. The prosecution characterizes this as advocacy. I characterize it as justice." "Ms. Chen," Judge Henderson interrupted, his voice grave. "A judge investigating his own case is highly irregular. You must acknowledge that." "Irregular? Yes. Unethical? No. Not when the alternative is a wrongful conviction." Matthews jumped back in. "The defense keeps talking about evidence of innocence. Your Honor, I've seen nothing that contradicts our case. We have a witness identification. We have the defendant near the scene. Judge Harrison has developed a theory based on library records that prove nothing, except that Marcus Chen was clever enough to establish an alibi." "An alibi isn't cleverness, Mr. Matthews," Patricia shot back. "It's called being innocent." That's when I broke protocol. I stood. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The courtroom went silent. Judge Henderson frowned. "Judge Harrison, you're represented by counsel. I know, but this isn't just about legal arguments. It's about something more fundamental." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "For 23 years I wore this robe believing the system worked. I believed that truth would emerge through proper procedure. I believed that if everyone followed the rules, justice would prevail." I pulled out the library footage still. Marcus Chen, clear as day, at 11:03 p.m., 25 minutes from the crime scene. But the system didn't work for Marcus Chen. The police didn't check his alibi. They showed the victim a single photo instead of a proper lineup. They arrested him based on racial profiling and called it reasonable police work. And when I discovered this, I had a choice: maintain my impartiality and let an innocent man be convicted, or risk everything to find the truth. Judge Henderson leaned forward. "You're a judge, William, not a defense attorney." "I'm a human being first," I said quietly. "And if being a good judge means ignoring innocence, then maybe I'm not meant to be a judge anymore." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Matthews looked triumphant. I'd just admitted to compromising my role. But Judge Henderson was silent, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "Your Honor," Patricia said quickly, "we're prepared to present the library footage and testimony that proves Marcus Chen's innocence. If the court removes Judge Harrison from this case, all we ask is that this evidence be properly considered by whoever takes over." Matthews stood again. "Your Honor, I must inform the court that we've reviewed the library footage. Our technology experts believe it may have been tampered with. The timestamp could be incorrect. We're requesting an independent analysis which will take approximately 3 months. My stomach dropped. 3 months meant Marcus would sit in jail while they analyzed footage they knew was legitimate. It was a stalling tactic, and it was working. Henderson looked troubled. This court will take a 30-minute recess while I consider the arguments. As the judge left, Patricia turned to me. Will, whatever happens next, you did the right thing. But I wasn't sure anymore. I'd violated every principle I'd built my career on. I'd compromised my position. I'd made myself vulnerable to accusations of bias, and Marcus Chen was still in jail. Maybe the system was designed to protect itself, not the people it was supposed to serve. Maybe I'd been naive all along. Judge Henderson's decision came swiftly after the recess. Judge Harrison, I'm removing you from the Chen case effective immediately. His voice was formal, final. While your motivations may have been noble, your actions compromised judicial propriety. Judge Michelle Roberts will be assigned to handle the case going forward. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel struck. 23 years of my career condensed into a single moment of dismissal. I felt Patricia's hand on my shoulder as reporters rushed toward us shouting questions. Matthews was already giving a statement to the cameras. Justice has been served today. The integrity of our judicial system has been protected. I walked out the back entrance, away from the media circus. My phone rang as I reached my car. Unknown number. Judge Harrison. A woman's voice, young, frightened. My name is Sarah Winters. I'm the clerk who was robbed. I need to talk to you, but not on the phone. They might be listening. My pulse quickened. The disappeared witness. Where are you? There's a coffee shop in Columbia, the Blue Moon Cafe. Come alone, please. They told me if I talked to anyone about what really happened, there would be consequences. I met Ray in the parking lot of the cafe 30 minutes later. He'd insisted on coming despite Sarah's warning to come alone. If this is a setup, you need someone watching your back, he'd said. No arguments. Sarah Winters was 23, small, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She sat in the corner booth, a cold coffee in front of her, jumping every time the door opened. I slid into the seat across from her. Sarah, thank you for reaching out. I shouldn't be here. Her voice trembled. They moved me to a new apartment. They said it was for my protection after the robbery, but I know they just wanted to control me, to make sure I didn't talk. Who's they? The police, specifically Officer Collins. She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. Judge Harrison, I need you to understand. When that man came into the store, I was terrified. I barely looked at his face. It was dark. He had a hoodie pulled low. Everything happened so fast. All I remember clearly is that he was young, maybe black or Hispanic or Asian. I honestly couldn't tell. I leaned forward carefully. But you identified Marcus Chen, because Officer Collins told me to. Her eyes filled with tears. 2 days after the robbery, he came to the store during my shift. He showed me one photograph, just one. He said, "Is this the guy who robbed you?" I looked at the photo and said I wasn't sure, that it might be him, but I couldn't say for certain. And you know what he said? She paused, wiping her eyes. He said, "Sarah, this is the guy. We know it's him. We just need you to confirm it for the paperwork. Otherwise he walks free and robs someone else. Maybe hurts someone next time. You don't want that on your conscience, do you?" My hands clenched into fists under the table. "So you identified him?" I was scared. I'm 23 years old. I work night shifts at a convenience store, and a police officer is standing there telling me I need to identify this person or I'm responsible for future crimes. What was I supposed to do? She sobbed openly now. I convinced myself maybe it was him, that my memory was just fuzzy, that the police knew more than I did. When did you realize you were wrong? About a week ago. I saw Marcus Chen's photo in the news. His mother was being interviewed, crying, talking about her innocent son. And Judge Harrison, I saw that woman's pain, and I knew in my gut that I'd identified the wrong person, that I'd sent an innocent man to jail. Ray had been recording the conversation on his phone with Sarah's permission. Now he spoke for the first time. "Sarah, would you be willing to testify to this, to go on record?" She was silent for a long moment, fear and conscience warring on her face. "If I testify, my life is over. Collins made that clear. He has connections everywhere. He'll make sure I can't get a job, that I'm not safe. Your life isn't over," I said firmly. "But Marcus Chen's might be if you don't speak up." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll testify." What we discovered next made everything else look small by comparison. Ray and I spent the following week digging into Officer Derek Collins's arrest record. What we found was a pattern so clear, so damning, that I couldn't believe it had gone unnoticed for years. In the past 5 years, Collins had made 167 arrests in minority neighborhoods. Of those, 149 resulted in convictions, an astounding 89% conviction rate. It was the kind of number that earned commendations, promotions, and praise from politicians who wanted to appear tough on crime. But when Ray cross-referenced those cases with public defender records, we found something chilling. 34 of those convictions were based primarily on single photo identifications. Not lineups, not arrays. Single photos shown to witnesses with leading questions. "This is a pattern of misconduct," Ray said, spreading the files across my dining room table. "Collins finds someone who fits a vague description, shows their photo to a traumatized witness, suggests they're the perpetrator, and builds a case from there. Quick arrests, quick convictions, impressive statistics. And innocent people in prison," I added quietly. My phone rang. Patricia Chen. "Will, we have a problem. Judge Roberts just ruled on the library footage. She's admitting it as evidence, but Matthews successfully argued for a 3-month delay while they conduct forensic analysis of the video. The trial has been pushed to January. 3 more months of Marcus sitting in jail. There has to be something we can do." "There might be," Patricia said carefully. "If we can prove a pattern of misconduct by Officer Collins, we could file a motion to dismiss based on police fraud. But Will, that's a nuclear option. It means accusing a decorated police officer of systematic civil rights violations. The department will fight us with everything they have." "Do it," I said without hesitation. That decision set off a chain reaction I wasn't prepared for. 2 days later, I was followed. A black sedan, tinted windows, staying 3 cars back but making every turn I made. I drove to the police station, the last place someone tailing me would want to be seen, and the car disappeared. Ray called that evening. "Someone broke into my apartment. Didn't take anything, but they went through my files. They're looking for what we have on Collins." Then came the threatening phone calls. Anonymous voices warning me to stop digging and let the system work. One particularly chilling message said, "Judges who forget their place don't stay judges long. Sometimes they don't stay breathing." I reported it all to the police. The detective who took my statement, he was Collins's partner. "We'll look into it, Judge Harrison," he said with barely concealed contempt. "But you know, sometimes when you attack good cops, they push back. Maybe you should consider that." It was then I realized how deep this went. Collins wasn't working alone. He had protection from within the department, maybe even higher up. Patricia filed our motion to dismiss based on a pattern of constitutional violations. The hearing was set for 3 days later. We had Sarah Winters' testimony, the library footage, and evidence of 34 other questionable convictions. But the night before the hearing, Sarah Winters called me, hysterical. "They arrested my brother," she sobbed. "They found drugs in his car, drugs that weren't there this morning. Collins made the arrest. He told my brother to tell me that if I testify tomorrow, my brother gets charged with distribution. That's 20 years. My blood ran cold. "Sarah, this is witness tampering. We can use this." "I can't testify," she interrupted. "I can't send my brother to prison. I'm sorry, Judge Harrison. I'm so sorry." She hung up. I sat in my study, surrounded by evidence that could free Marcus Chen and expose a system of corruption, but without Sarah's testimony it might not be enough. Matthews would argue that the library footage was inconclusive, that the pattern of arrests was coincidental, that we were attacking good police work, and Marcus would stay in prison. I looked at the photograph of my mother on my desk, the one taken the day I was sworn in as a judge. She'd been so proud. "You're going to help so many people, William," she'd said. I hadn't helped Marcus Chen, not yet, but I was about to break the biggest rule of all. I called an emergency meeting in my home that night. Ray, Patricia, and someone else who'd quietly joined our investigation. Elena Rodriguez, a civil rights attorney who'd spent 20 years fighting police misconduct. "We're out of options," Patricia said bluntly. "Without Sarah's testimony, we can't prove Collins coerced the identification. The library footage shows Marcus wasn't at the scene, but Matthews will argue it doesn't prove he didn't commit the crime, just that he wasn't there at that exact time. He'll create doubt." "What about the pattern of misconduct?" Elena asked. "Circumstantial. Collins's defense will say he's just good at his job, that his high conviction rate reflects his skill, not his corruption. We need a smoking gun." Ray leaned forward. "Then we need to go after Collins directly. Get him to slip up, admit something on record." "How?" I asked. "He's not going to confess." No, Ray agreed. But he might brag. Guys like Collins, they think they're untouchable. Give him a target he thinks he's scared into silence, and he might reveal more than he intends. Patricia shook her head. Ray, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, it's incredibly dangerous, and possibly illegal. So is framing innocent people, Ray shot back. Elena interrupted. There's another option, a more direct one. She turned to me. Will, you testify. The room went silent. What? I said finally. You're a sitting judge. You investigated this case. You have first-hand knowledge of how the evidence was handled, of Collins's pattern, of the pressure to conform. If you testify about what you discovered and why you believe Marcus is innocent, the jury has to listen. Your credibility will be shredded by Matthews, Patricia interjected. The prosecution will paint him as a biased judge who went rogue. They'll say he's having a breakdown, that he can't be trusted. Maybe, Elena said, or maybe the jury will see a man who gave up everything for the truth. Will, you've already been removed from the bench. Your career is effectively over, but you still have your voice. Use it. I stood, walking to the window. Outside, Silver Spring sparkled with evening lights. Thousands of lives unfolding, most of them trusting that the system worked, that judges were impartial, that police were honest. If I testify, I said slowly, I'm admitting to conduct violations. I'm confirming everything Matthews has said about me. The Maryland Bar Association could disbar me entirely. Yes, Eleanor said simply, I'll never be a judge again. Probably not. I turned to face them. And if I do this, if I throw away everything I've built and Marcus still gets convicted? Ray stood, moving beside me. Then at least you'll know you tried, that you didn't let the system crush an innocent man without a fight. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop this now or your wife's clinic gets investigated for Medicare fraud. We can make charges appear out of nowhere. Ask Sarah Winters' brother. I showed the message to the others. They're threatening Catherine now, Patricia said quietly. Will, no one would blame you for walking away. You've already risked everything. I thought about Catherine, my wife of 28 years. She ran a small medical clinic in Tacoma Park, serving mostly low-income families. An investigation would destroy her work, hurt her patients, devastate her. I called her. Kat, there's something I need to tell you. I explained everything. The threats, the investigation, what testifying would mean for both of us. She was silent for a long moment. Then, Will, do you remember what you said to me the night we got engaged? You said you wanted to marry me because I made you want to be braver than you thought possible. That love wasn't about comfort. It was about supporting each other in doing hard, scary, necessary things. I remember. Then do the hard, scary, necessary thing. Testify. Tell the truth. And I'll deal with whatever comes. I hung up, tears in my eyes. Okay, I told the others. I'll testify. But we do this right. We need to be prepared for everything Matthews will throw at us. Elena nodded. Then let's build the case. We have 3 days. 3 days to prepare testimony that would either free Marcus Chen or destroy everything I had left. I'd already broken my oath. Now I had to break my silence. The courtroom was standing room only when Marcus Chen's trial finally began. Judge Michelle Roberts presided, a fair jurist known for her no-nonsense approach. The jury was seated, 12 ordinary citizens from Montgomery County who would decide whether Marcus spent the next 20 years in prison or walked free. Prosecutor Matthews gave his opening statement with practiced precision. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a simple case. Marcus Chen robbed a convenience store at gunpoint. The victim identified him. He was found in the area. The defense will try to confuse you with complicated theories and attacks on good police work, but don't be fooled. The evidence is clear. Patricia stood for our opening. The evidence is clear, she agreed. It clearly shows that Marcus Chen is innocent, that he was miles away when this crime occurred, that the police took shortcuts, that a witness was coerced, and that a sitting judge risked everything to prevent a wrongful conviction. Pay attention to who's willing to sacrifice what for the truth. The prosecution went first. They showed the security footage, played Sarah's original identification testimony from the preliminary hearing, and painted Marcus as a calculating criminal who'd established an alibi. Then Matthews called Officer Derek Collins to the stand. Collins was impressive in his uniform, confident, articulate, every inch the professional law enforcement officer. He described the investigation methodically, the witness identification process, the arrest. When Patricia cross-examined him, the temperature in the room shifted. Officer Collins, how many arrests have you made in the past 5 years? I'd have to check my records, but approximately 150 to 170. And your conviction rate? Around 89%. I'm proud of that number. I'm sure you are. Officer Collins, in how many of those cases did you use single photo identifications? Collins hesitated, just for a moment. I follow standard procedure. That wasn't my question. How many single photo identifications? I don't keep track of. We do. 34 cases in 5 years where the primary evidence was a single photo shown to a witness. Is that standard procedure, Officer Collins? Matthews objected. Relevance, Your Honor. I'm establishing a pattern, Patricia responded. Judge Roberts considered. I'll allow it, but get to your point, Counselor. Patricia pulled out a document. Officer Collins, do you recognize this form? It's from your own department's training manual. It explicitly states that photo identifications should be conducted using lineups of at least 6 similar-looking individuals, not single photos. Why didn't you follow your own department's guidelines? In the field, you have to make quick decisions. Quick decisions, or decisions designed to secure arrests regardless of actual guilt. Objection. Matthews was on his feet. Counsel is testifying. Sustained. Ms. Chen, ask questions, don't make speeches. But the jury had heard it. I could see several jurors looking at Collins with new skepticism. Patricia pressed on. When you showed Sarah Winters Marcus Chen's photograph, what exactly did you say to her? I asked if she could identify the perpetrator. Just that? Nothing else? Collins shifted. I may have said something like, "Is this the person who robbed you?" You may have. Officer Collins, did you tell Sarah Winters that Marcus Chen was the suspect and you just needed her to confirm it? I don't recall my exact words. But it's possible you said something that suggested Marcus was already guilty. I follow proper procedure. That's not an answer to my question. The exchange went on for another hour. Patricia methodically dismantled Collins' testimony, revealing inconsistencies, pressuring him on details, making him defensive and evasive. But we all knew the real moment was coming. Your Honor, Patricia said, the defense calls Judge William Harrison to the stand. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Matthews shot to his feet immediately. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Judge Harrison was removed from this case for bias. He was removed from presiding, Patricia corrected. He wasn't barred from testifying about what he discovered. He has material knowledge relevant to this case. Judge Roberts considered. I'll allow it, but Mr. Harrison, you understand you're testifying as a fact witness, not as a judicial officer. I stood. I understand, Your Honor. As I walked to the witness stand, I caught Marcus's eyes. He looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. For 23 years, I'd sat where Judge Roberts now sat, watching witnesses take this oath. I'd evaluated their credibility, their truthfulness, their courage. Now it was my turn to be judged. Patricia approached. Please state your name and occupation for the record. William Harrison. I was a circuit court judge for Montgomery County for 23 years. I was removed from that position 3 weeks ago. Why were you removed? Because I investigated Marcus Chen's case and discovered he was innocent. Matthews objected, but Judge Roberts overruled him. The witness may explain his reasoning, and so I did. I testified for 3 hours. I explained how the evidence had troubled me from the beginning, how I'd watched the security footage dozens of times and seen inconsistencies, how Marcus's fear had seemed different from guilt, how Ray Porter had helped me discover the library footage showing Marcus 25 miles away when the robbery occurred. Patricia guided me through each discovery, each piece of evidence, each moment when the system had failed. Judge Harrison, she asked, why did you risk your career to investigate this case? I looked directly at the jury, because I realized something that terrified me. For 23 years, I'd been part of a system that I believed worked, that I believed would naturally arrive at truth if everyone followed the rules. But the rules didn't work for Marcus Chen. The police didn't follow proper identification procedures. The prosecutor didn't investigate the alibi. The system was designed to move efficiently, not carefully. And efficiency without diligence creates injustice. And what did you learn from this experience? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I learned that justice isn't a machine that runs itself. It requires people willing to look beyond the surface, to ask uncomfortable questions, to risk something when they see the system failing. I broke my oath as a judge, or at least I violated the traditions of judicial conduct, because keeping that oath would have meant being complicit in destroying an innocent man's life. Matthews's cross-examination was brutal. He attacked my credibility, my mental state, my motivations. He suggested I was having a crisis, that I'd become obsessed with playing detective, that I'd compromised not just this case, but potentially dozens of others I'd presided over. "Isn't it true, Mr. Harrison," he said pointedly, stripping away my judicial title, "that you've violated virtually every ethical rule governing judges? That you've demonstrated you can't be trusted to follow the law?" "I followed a higher law," I replied, "the one that says innocent people shouldn't go to prison." "That's not your decision to make, that's what juries are for." "Then let this jury make it," I said calmly, "based on all the evidence, including the evidence that you tried to suppress by requesting a 3-month delay on the library footage analysis, including Officer Collins's pattern of questionable identifications, including every inconvenient truth you wanted buried to protect your conviction rate." Matthews's face reddened, but he had no response. After I stepped down, Patricia called one final witness, Elena Rodriguez, the civil rights attorney. Elena testified about the 34 other cases with similar patterns, about the complaints against Collins that had mysteriously vanished, about a system that rewarded arrests over accuracy. The trial lasted 6 days. In closing arguments, Matthews painted me as a rogue judge and Marcus as a calculating criminal. Patricia told a simpler story: an innocent man, a flawed system, and one person brave enough to fight for truth. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. "We find the defendant, Marcus Chen, not guilty." Marcus collapsed into Patricia's arms, sobbing. His mother, who'd flown in from California, rushed to embrace him. I felt tears streaming down my own face, but there was no celebration for me. 3 weeks later, the Maryland Bar Association held my disciplinary hearing. Despite testimonials from Patricia, Eleanor, Ray, and even Marcus himself, the decision was predetermined. I was disbarred. My law license revoked. 23 years of service erased. The recommendation letter stated, "While Judge Harrison's motivations may have been admirable, his conduct violated fundamental principles of judicial ethics and cannot be condoned." I stood on the courthouse steps afterward. No longer Judge Harrison, just William. Ray joined me. "You okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I saved Marcus, but I lost everything." "Did you, though?" He pointed to a crowd gathering across the street, people holding signs reading, "Thank you, Judge Harrison," and "Justice overrules," and "You're still our judge." My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from former defendants whose cases I'd handled fairly, from attorneys who'd respected my work, from ordinary citizens who'd heard my story, and a text from Marcus. "You gave me my life back. I start nursing school next month. Because of you." Catherine appeared beside me, taking my hand. "Come on, let's go home." We walked away from the courthouse together. I'd never wear the black robe again. I'd never sit behind that mahogany bench. But I'd done something more important than maintain tradition. I'd chosen a person over a system. Afterward, I started something new, a non-profit organization called the Justice Project, working with Elena and Ray to investigate potential wrongful convictions. We've reviewed 43 cases so far. We've helped exonerate 11 innocent people. The work is harder now. I have no judicial authority, no official standing, just determination and the belief that justice isn't about perfection. It's about people willing to fight for it, even when the cost is everything. I broke the law to save a life. Would you do the same? What would you risk for justice in your community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about the courage to do what's right, even when it costs us everything. Sometimes following your conscience means breaking your oath. Sometimes being truly just means becoming a criminal in the eyes of a flawed system. And sometimes the price of one man's freedom is another man's entire career. I paid that price, and I'd pay it again. Because Marcus Chen is free. Because 11 others have been exonerated. Because justice, real justice, isn't about rules written in books. It's about human beings willing to stand up when those rules fail. That's what I learned when I broke my own law. That's what I'd want every judge, every lawyer, every person who works in our justice system to understand. The system exists to serve justice, not the other way around. And when you forget that, you become part of the problem. I was part of that problem for 23 years, but for one case, for one innocent man, I became part of the solution, even if it cost me everything. Thank you for following this journey with touching stories. If this story moved you, if it made you think about justice in your own community, please share it. And tell me, what's your city's story of justice or injustice? Comment below, and let's keep this conversation going, because stories change minds, and minds change systems.